How to treat chronic migraines. Upwards of 10% of the population has suffered with a migraine. Nearly 17% of women will suffer a migraine compared to upwards of 6% of males. So we're going to talk about why people are struggling with these chronic migraines. If you've done medication, it works for you, fantastic. But we're going to talk about why medications often don't work. And let's dive into the research on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen, and we are going to check out some of the research. So the very first article we're going to look at is mechanisms of migraine as a chronic evolutive condition. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and what we're going to see is you've got what's called a interictal phase. Okay, so this is the phase before another migraine occurs. And then you start going down this cascade. So we can see cravings, yawning, and then ultimately you can get auras. Now, a lot of migraines don't have auras, so you don't have to have visual changes, speech difficulties, confusion, or numbness, but this does occur with those with auras. And then you get all of those fun migraine symptoms that everyone just loves so much. So the headache, the nausea, the vomiting, the sensory disturbances, so the light, sound, poor concentration, difficulty with doing stuff, with the activities. And even for some people, this is disabling while they have their migraine. And then afterwards, you can be really tired, feel hungover, and not even have really an appetite. And then you go back to, once again, the predisposing factors to start your cycle for your next migraine. So we've got triggers, genetic factors, and even the weather. So let's dive into what that looks like a little bit more. So this other study I wanted to go to is the genetics, pathophysiology, diagnosis, treatment, management, and prevention of migraines. This from Biomedicine and Pharmacotherapy, 2021. First thing I really need you to realize is migraine is a chronic neurological disease, multifactorial. Once again, multifactorial. So when people try one medication after another, they're going for one point in a process versus what I'm going to discuss is, well, what are the triggers? Okay, because if we can better understand the triggers, we usually are able to reduce the amount, the severity, and the duration of each migraine that someone experiences. So the very first thing is, this is a multifactorial issue. And when we look at this graphic, right, of what contributes to migraines, we've got foods, we've got daily life patterns, we've got genetics, and then we also have other things happening at a cellular level. We've got some of these that we can measure, such as like hormones, insulin, iron, things like that. And then we have other things that are harder to measure, such as mitochondrial enzymes, nitric oxide, and other things like that. But these are things that we know play a role in migraines. So if you're struggling with migraines and no one's really tried to dissect this with you, then that means there's a lot of potential for you to improve and get better. So next, what I want to do is, here's all the genes. We're not going to worry about the genes because, well, people can have genes that increase the risk of migraine. The fact is, if you've got it, there's not a lot that can be done to change the genes per se, but we can change what influences the genes. So now there's different phases of migraines, right? So we've got prodrome, the irritability, mood swings, fatigue. And then we've got the acute phase. Now, the cortical spreading depression is basically you've got brain cells, your neurons, they will excessively fire before they should, leading to a wide range of symptoms. Now, this is what we really see with auras, is cortical spreading depression. Once again, this isn't in every migraine, but in those with that. And then lastly, it starts a process, okay? Causes a release of many inflammatory compounds. One of the things that medications are really going after is the CGRP. But once again, that's not the only one. There are more factors beyond this. And that's why, even though that medication helps some people, there are others who are not getting the help they need. And then lastly, the last effect, you got the postdrome, so kind of the aftermath. Now, what I want to do is scroll down here a little bit more. So when we look at migraines, okay, the symptoms can precede the headache by 72 hours. Now, those symptoms may be irritability, food cravings, mood swings, fatigue, stiffness, phonophobia, so noise, you know, those are things. Now, as a result, we've already talked about the cortical spreading depression and everything else. So this impacts people from a neurological perspective. So when I evaluate someone for migraine, it is a neurological based issue. So if we're going to evaluate neurological based issue, we should understand how the neurons themselves are functioning. While we can't do it probably the level I would like, you can evaluate balance and eye movements are really, really good indicators of how the brain's functioning. And if there's issues off there, that can definitely predispose people to migraines in my experience. So the first part is you have to know how the brain's functioning. Most people with migraines never have their brain function ever looked at beyond an MRI. Just make sure there's no tumor or things like that going on. Number two, once you've established how your brain's functioning, you need to understand what factors would impact it from functioning the way it should be. So this is your metabolic dysfunction and triggering factors. Okay, so we've got fasting, we've got sleep, we've got hormones, especially menstruation, we've got physical exercise, alcohol, weather changes, and there's other things that when added together can set the stage for someone to have a migraine. Now, the other thing I want to talk about along with this is stress, okay? Stress is also known as a trigger. So people that have heightened stress responses due to childhood trauma, abusive relationships, other things like that, when they go from 0 to 60 and they should have only went from 0 to 10, that can also trigger migraines. Now, why migraines are so challenging for people to treat is one, we're trying to simplify it down to what's the best medication to go to this end stage thing versus saying what's tipping the dominoes to begin with. And I can get people who come in here with migraines, their migraine symptoms can all be the same, but the reason why they're tipping over is different for each and every one of them. For some, it has more to do with their brain function, with what we find there. For others, it has more to do with what's going on in their body, from hormones to food sensitivity to inflammatory compounds, blood sugar, and other things like that. While there's others where it's due to stress response. Usually it's a combination of these three, but only with the proper evaluation and testing can you get the answers you need. So if you're dealing with chronic migraine issues and you feel you've hit the end of the road, you've done every medication you can think of, you've done Botox, and you're still frustrated, there are other things you can do, but it does require leveraging the research, using an outside the box approach where we say, what are factors that we know contribute to migraines, and be open to do something new. So let me know what you thought. Comment if you have questions. If there's other things you'd like me to discuss in future videos, please let me know. And lastly, if you'd like to work with me, you can by visiting my website, idahobrainandbody.com, and my team will reach out to you.